Welcome back to our 3-minute ticker covering the book of Titus. We're going verse by verse study. And I want you to go to verse 13 of chapter 1 of the book of Titus. Look at what he said. This testimony is true. For this reason, reprove them severely so they may be sound in the faith. Paul is saying, listen, you're going to have people going to infiltrate the church. And as leaders, as ministers, and church people, we must guard the doctrines of the church, because doctrine will determine people's destiny. Doctrine is going to determine people's behavior. How you think is going to determine how people act. So he says, listen, this testimony I'm telling you is true, and you got to severely, he says, reprove them severely. That word in the Greek means to cut with a knife. He says you got to confront this thing to the point that you have to cut this type of doctrines, cut it out, carve it out of the church of Jesus Christ. Otherwise, it's going to infiltrate the church. We are guardians of the truth. And this is why we have been called to be watchmen, not just to pray, but to watch and pray what happens in the church. He says, for this reason, reprove them severely so they may be sound in their faith. Your faith must be based on sound doctrine, biblical doctrine. Listen, don't just be misled by what people say, or it might sound good, it might sound contemporary. What you want to know if it's true. Just to stand in the truth of the word of God. Then it takes us to verse 14. Not paying attention to Jewish myth and commandments of men who turn away from the truth. Look at how he comes back. Turning away from the truth. Who is he talking about? These rebellious men. Why they're rebellious? Because they're turning away from the truth. They're not aligning themselves with what God has said through his word. And there were people that were of a sect that were teaching that the traditions of men were superseding the doctrines of God. We must be very careful as guardians of the truth to not allow cultural Christianity to take over what the Word of God is teaching us. Whenever we set man's rules, man's way, it might even sound good. It might even sound even practical, but if it supersedes the Word of God, it's annulling the Word of God, and then we are out of the will of God, because the Word of God is the will of God, and the will of God is the Word of God. So what the Bible is telling us, listen, if you're going to be the leader, not only you must have emotional stability, you must have doctrinal stability, and part of being doctrinally stable is not to tolerate the type of false teaching. Well, can't wait for the next verses, because we're going to cover something very exciting as we move forward through the book of Titus. God bless you, and let this be the best day of your life.